Hi everybody, Professor Snart here. Hopefully you had a good spring break, restful and totally unproductive like mine, which is embarrassing, but maybe good news in the long run. But we are back with full force into our online course here. So Unit 5 was due on Monday, which is yesterday. Today's Tuesday. And now we're looking at Unit 6, which is the last unit before Unit 7, which is our first full essay assignment. So in some ways it might feel like it's taking a long time to get to the composition part of our English composition class, but keep in mind that what we've been doing is sort of developing in a slightly more focused way all of the skills or concepts or ideas that we want to then deploy in those more formal essays. So we are covering course content even if we're not writing formal essays every single unit. So Unit 6 then is very simple, but maybe the most important on a word-for-word basis as far as our entire course goes. Locating secondary sources. So I'll say this a couple of times, but this is one of those announcements where if things don't, how do I put this? If I don't get from you essays that reflect that you've gotten the idea from this particular unit, this one specifically, it really shows me that you haven't learned what you have to learn in English 1102, which is the research course. So Unit 6, Locating Secondary Sources, is fundamental to the research component of the research course. So again, a very short and relatively easy unit, but immensely important as far as what you need to reflect back to me when it comes time to do those more formal essays. So, locating secondary sources, one of the ways that we'll do that in our course is using the databases that are provided through the COD library. Be aware that you need a library card if you're off campus to get access to these, which was one of the things, getting a card was one of the very first things we did as part of our whole course, so you should have that in place. If you're on campus or can get to campus, then you can access these directly, so you don't need to worry about the card. But here's what I'll say about the kind of secondary sources we're using, and this will go for all of the writing assignments that we do, and again is one of those things where if something other than what we're doing here shows up as part of your essays for class, that really shows me that you just haven't learned what you've got to learn. So this is, I can't say it anymore, forcefully or at this point repetitively, this is crucial to learn. So the kind of source that we're looking at is a literary commentary, right? Of course, we're reading short stories, we'll be reading a play. So the type of secondary material we're looking for is always a discussion directly about the particular short story or play that we're writing on. What you don't want to find, or what's not appropriate for our purposes, is if you read a short story like Araby by James Joyce, which is part of this unit. It tells the tale of this boy's really first boyhood crush and kind of how he's deflated at the end of it. He had very high hopes and nothing really works out the way he wanted. To find a secondary source that would be appropriate for an essay of the kind that we're writing on that short story, you want to find a discussion of the short story, not an article from, the Journal of Child Development or something like that. It deals not with the story, but just with an idea that's kind of tangentially related. So those related ideas, that kind of material is not appropriate for what we're looking at. You want to find material that's a direct discussion of the story or the play or whatever the primary text that you're covering is. The other thing to be conscious of is there's absolutely never a case where you want to just use the general web for stuff. That is a point that's highlighted throughout the course and is also why we take great care right now in Unit 6 in going through this exercise in using the databases, which do provide the kind of appropriate material in terms of the content. It's a discussion of short story or play, and it's from a source, from a database that's appropriate for our purposes, right? So there's two things that you can really screw up. You can find secondary sources that just happen to be on a related idea, like for Death of a Salesman, for example, you find a book or some textbook or some article on, the art of selling, or, cars in the 1940s or something like that. Maybe related on a very general, broad level, but not the kind of source that we're looking for. The other thing to potentially do wrong is, instead of using the databases or appropriate print material, is you just go to the web and Google, Death of a Salesman or James Joyce or Araby or something like that. So absolutely no just kind of general web material is ever going to show up in the essays that you're writing for this class. And one of the things to be conscious of is, this isn't an indictment of the web, like everything that Google provides is just by default untrustworthy. That's not the case, and in fact that's changing rapidly. Often we can find very good, credible, professional, edited, vetted information on the web. For us, though, what you want to do in your essays is show me that you can go through the process of that more formal academic college level research, which means going to the databases, using the library catalog, for example, if you want to find print sources. So it's as much about showing me that you can do those steps as it is about the final information that you find. It is, still the case, though, that if you Google Death of a Salesman or Araby or whatever, 90% of what you find is not going to be professional or credible or useful, and is going to lead to problems of plagiarism and incorrect information or poorly written information that then you're importing into your essay. So it still is often the case that what the web provides is not particularly appropriate for the sort of academic writing that we're doing. Hey, welcome back from spring break, by the way. I mean, does it sound great or what? Okay, so pretty dire warnings, but I can't stress enough how important it is to really understand now, in Unit 6, basically halfway through our class, that you need to find appropriate material in terms of the content, direct discussions of primary texts, and it needs to come from appropriate places, like, in this case, the databases. So I'll actually return to these ideas to remind you as we get into more of the research writing for the class. But for now, let's leave it at that. And as always, if you have any questions about just wanting to clarify exactly what kinds of sources we're looking for, or if, like for Unit 8, where we're actually using the sources in an essay, if you want to make sure you've found one that's appropriate, found one that's from the right kind of place, or the right kind of database, it's always better to double check with me. Even if you're 99% sure, you just want to kind of make 100% sure, always better just to check with me before using that source, rather than having things really go off the rails. And mistakes of that source kind, just general web stuff or totally inappropriate content-wise, that really has a major effect on your grade, because again, that's such a fundamental component of what we're trying to learn in 1102, the research class. So, wow, kind of a harsh way to come back from spring break, but we are getting pretty close to the end of the term, even though for us, because of our 8-week format, feels like we've just sort of started things. But the end of the semester is coming up in about a month or so. So just be aware that everything in all your classes probably speeds up a little bit as we get towards the end. Even more reason to be in touch with me with any concerns or questions, or again, just to sort of double check what you pretty much know is correct, but you just want to make 100% sure. So be in touch if you have any questions, and I'll talk to everybody later.